From Heaven Blues Channel, Paranormal Book 20, Part 5, Tarot Cards. You will only find these books translated in English here, so please take a second to hit like and subscribe for more upcoming content. The Fourth Tale, and now I ask for your silence, starring Mary Julam. It's your turn, my little one, but I promise you it won't take long. Name, Mary Julam. Age, 17. Occupation, student. Residency, New York. Hobbies, she is a romantic girl who loves poetry and music and plays the piano badly. She has a limited group of friends, the most important among them being Louise Mazursky. She loves the ambience of horror and the worlds of the paranormal, being a person of dark moods. And let this hobby be the curse on her head. General characteristics? Aside from her cursed hobby, we can say without reservation that Mary is a sensible girl, rather calm. By nature, she belongs to the lovely 1950s era, and our proof of this is that Mrs. Mazursky trusts her implicitly. With tender fingertips, Mary began shuffling the cards, then handed them across the table to the strange, ravenous doctor, and then folded her legs under her again, like a small cat. "Pardon me, Dr. Lucifer, it's the Colby's agitated voice echoed. But Dr. Lucifer silenced him with a firm gesture of his hand. He then took the tarot cards and started placing them on the table, adjacent and even touching each other. As for me, I tried to stretch my legs, which had become stiff from this Indian-style sitting. Why does this charlatan insist on sitting on the floor? He is just trying to affect us psychologically. And this effect results from the connection between magic and the East, or with the more specific meaning, like the Arabian Nights. But all this seems juvenile, since Lucifer is a stranger sitting with a group of strangers. Anyway, I reached for my shoelaces, and without hesitating, took my shoe off, and how comfy. I noticed Lucifer wrinkling his nose, and on his face was an expression of disgust. Well, let him wonder about the source of this smell. If he truly is a fortune-teller, why could he not perceive that someone took off his shoes under the hexagonal table? Now, let's take a look at the cards. The first card was the wise man, who sits holding the cane of wisdom, as an eagle sits at his feet. Psychologists say it symbolizes the development of wits within humans. And court says it symbolizes the authority of the Pope in the 4th century, whereas all tarot readers believe it is a card that represents mercy, pity, diplomacy. Then came the castle card, which shows two men being struck by lightning as they attempt to storm a huge castle. Then came the devil cards, the wheel of fortune. Then finally, the death card. But this is getting boring. This Lucifer is like the one who plays the 3 cards trick in my country. And I'm pretty sure he hides this death card in his sleeve, to show it every time. I heard his tiger-like voice echo in the silence. "By my life, you are playing with fire, girl, and to you I will tell everything, but I want no interruptions." Mary then said, "Okay, sir." Mary was fascinated by all things strange. True, she was a traditional, polite, well-raised girl, except for her sick fascination with horror, the horror that quickens her soul. She was, she remembered, 7 years old when she did something wrong. What was it exactly? The important thing is that her mother saw it as a grave mistake. She pulled Mary by the arm to the basement with its dank smell and spiderwebs, then locked the door. Total darkness. "Mommy, Mommy, please, I'll be a good girl," she repeatedly cried and banged her head on the wall, but in vain. In the darkness, unknown creatures awaken, all having fangs and claws, all of them coming to eat her. The thought breaks her, yet at the same time she enjoys it, making her shake with ecstasy. She freaks out and screams again. By the end of this experience, Mary had become an addict to horror, which was suitable to her calm, silent character. In her bed, she read all that was written about vampires, werewolves, and graves opening at night with claw-like hands protruding, because romance, darkness, and horror are intertwined. Otherwise, how did Mary Shelley, the wife of the famous poet, write the book Frankenstein? And how did Edgar Allan Poe combine horror with poetry? But Mary did not confess to anyone her private world, especially as Louise did not pay much attention. And here, Harriet appeared on the scene. We have met Harriet before, and we learned she is red-headed, loud, and foolish, and we found out she is pale and loves the darkness and night, and we learned that she has a magnetic personality that locks her acquaintances within her web, and Harriet was a big spider indeed. On this night, 4 girls sit in the home of one of them, exchanging jokes and punchlines. If we zoom in with the camera, we find among them a skinny girl wearing thick glasses. This girl is Louise Mazursky. Another girl, the red-haired one, who constantly laughs deviously, is Harriet. As for this angelic virgin, this is Mary. And the 4th girl is a dark-skinned girl wearing shorts, Helen, whose house this is. And as we see, Harriet continues her profane joking, talking about boys, while Louise and Mary, who is conservative, laugh nervously as they are not used to this way. While putting her feet up on the couch, Harriet says, "Let's play a fun game." "Like what?" came Harriet's answer. "Like attempting to call on spirits." Despite Helen and Louise's better judgment and protests, Harriet and Mary win this argument. And why not? It's not such a bad game. None of them had tried it before except for Harriet, whom they sometimes thought knows everything about the universe. It's an easy thing. Helen brings out a big paper and writes the alphabet in the margins. She then brings a cup and, after turning off the lights and chanting certain spells, each girl puts one finger at the base of the cup. Then the cup moves to each subsequent letter, and the letters spell out the words. "But this is risky," said Louise. She had read that there is some way of banishing the spirits, otherwise some of them may insist on staying. "Nonsense," said Harriet. "All spirits disappear as soon as you finish talking to them." And just like that, in the dim light, the 4 friends sat around the cup and paper on the floor. "Whose spirit should we call on?" Helen questioned. So Harriet answered without hesitation. "There have been lots of questions raised about Jack the Ripper. Many claimed that they knew the identity of the serial killer who terrorized London in the past century. Actually, one condemned man even shouted, 'I am Jack,' as the trap door opened under him, but he died before the executioner knew if he was Jack the Ripper or not. This man is one of the mysteries and riddles in the history of crime, and I think I want to ask his spirit about that secret." Mary said, shaking from the enormity of the idea, you want to add horror upon horror?" "Why not?" Harriet replied. "Isn't this the thrill we're after?" Then her green cat-like eyes widened and she whispered in a raspy voice, "And now I ask for your silence." They summoned the spirit of John Dolittle, the man whose final words were cut short on the gallows. And then they waited, but in vain. It was a failed experiment from the first moment. At a late night hour, the 3 girls left to return home in Harriet's sports car. Helen had stood in her doorway telling them goodbye, and then went back inside. As soon as Mary entered her own house and started changing clothes, the phone rang. She rushed to pick up the receiver before someone else woke up, having slept hours ago. And she picked up. "Hello?" "Mary, it's Helen." "What's up, Helen?" Mary heard anxiety in her friend's voice, saying, "The cup we played that damn game with, wasn't it upside down when you left my house?" What a weird question. Mary replied carelessly, "Of course, I don't remember, but I think it was. No, it was for sure." Helen's shaking voice came back. "Well, after I saw you off and went back to my room, I found the cup upright." Mary started. "I don't see how that's important," but Helen interrupted her. "Don't you get it, you fool? I didn't touch the cup, and also none of you had touched it, which means that someone flipped it over. But it's possible that one of us turned it over without noticing." "That didn't happen, Mary. It just didn't happen. I swear, I'm scared, Mary. Really scared." Mary sighed with impatience, saying, All that is the nervous effect of the game, if we can call it that. Your nervousness makes you imagine crazy things." Then she swallowed the lump in her throat and offered her friend an invitation she hoped Helen would not accept. If she only knew Egyptian proverbs, she would have enjoyed the expression, "a fisherman's invitation," for it described exactly what she was thinking right now. She asked, "Do you want me to spend the night at your place?" Helen would spend the night alone, as her mom and dad were separated, and her mom, being a doctor, often spent the whole night at work. And this miserable girl would spend a horrifying night for real. But she could still pretend to be brave. She replied, "No, Mary, I'll be fine. Good night." "Good night." Mary thought, why didn't she believe her? Why didn't she pay more attention to the matter? She could have gone to her, and she could have asked her to come spend the night with her, and she could have called the cops, but she did none of that. She went to sleep, only to have many nightmares. She dreamt of cups filled with blood that spilled on her dress, and Harriet's suspicious-looking, extra-white teeth as blood dripped from her red hair. When she got up in the morning in a cold sweat, she decided she would cut ties with this dumb Harriet from now on. She would not be a key in Harriet's keychain, with Harriet amusing herself by the sound of its rattling. The other girls had become keys, but she would not. Shortly afterwards, she received a call from Louise telling her that Helen was dead. Under the big elm trees outside the school fence, the three girls met, Harriet, Mary, and Louise. They were sure no one could see or hear them, and the topic of their meeting was what had happened to Helen. The neighbors had heard screams coming from Helen's house, and they rushed over, trying to break down the door, and then called the cops. The cops came, broke through the locked door, and entered, searching the apartment carefully, but finding nothing. No dead girl's body or blood or evidence of violence. This was just a clean, tidy home whose owner had left. They could not fault the neighbors. Since they all agreed that they had heard screams, they could not say it was just a delusion. But what exactly happened? The answer was in a dirty back alley in the city, and the one who found it was a bum walking there. He had found a teenage girl's body who was strangled with a thick rope. Of course, there is no need to describe the corpse further, as there are ladies here. But this picture is so traditional, and anyone who is reading the obituary page in the newspaper gets it. Also, there is no need to insult the reader's intelligence by blabbering about the cops' search for the dead girl's identity. It was Helen, of course. But who killed her? And why would she leave her home in such an hour? The police could not discover who was with her that night, but her three friends knew, and it's clear that they would tell the cops nothing, so as not to implicate themselves in the trap of suspicion and interrogation. But Harriet expressed a terrible idea, telling them, "Jack the Ripper would kill women by strangling them with a rope." Mary looked at her, her eyes widening in horror. "What do you mean?" "What I mean is that this cannot be a coincidence." "Again, what do you mean?" Harriet said shortly, "Her talk about the cup. John Dolittle really was Jack the Ripper, and it's clear that his spirit responded to our call, but then did not go away. His spirit is having fun by killing us, and it started by killing the resident of the house." "Gosh, Harriet, don't say that." "But it's the only thing that can be said," Harriet answered, and with a firm look she warned the two scared girls. "So we should watch out. And no need to mention even one word about this game of summoning souls. No one knows anything about us except that we are Helen's friends. We'll attend her funeral tomorrow and cry a lot, and then it'll be over." She checked her watch and clutched her book bag tightly and said, "Let's go now. And remember, each one of us should watch her own back and check the opinion of people with knowledge if she can." She then lifted her index finger in warning. "And now, I ask for your silence." And so the days passed, and as we would expect, Mary now stayed away from her friends Louise and Harriet, as she noticed the change starting to take place in the nature of the former. But she could not find an explanation for it. And then came the conversation that took place between her and Mrs. Mazursky. And, by the way, Mary was the one who suggested to the mother to consult Professor Hendricks, whose opinion she trusted completely. Mary did not realize the reason for the change taking place in Louise was that Louise was turning into a vampire. And if she had known, she would have freaked out and told the professor, as the connection between Helen's death and Louise's transformation into a vampire would have shed light on the whole story, would have shed the light on Harriet. But Mary didn't know. She just went to the professor alone and told him the whole story, asking for his opinion. But the man had nothing to say except that he thought there was something evil in this story. He advised her, as usual, to consult with the Hungarian spiritual guru named Dr. Lucifer. And so here she is, having come to our party tonight with Louise's mother, another woman filled with questions which need answers. Dr. Lucifer leaned close to Mary's face, asking, "I wonder if I made any mistakes here, Mary?" Dr. Lucifer had not made a mistake in a single letter. The story was exactly like he related it, without any change. Looking at the cards, Dr. Lucifer said, "Once again, Mary, you ignore signs as clear as the midday sun about who Harriet is. Where does she live?" "I don't know," Mary responded. "She says she is originally from Pennsylvania, and she joined our evening classes 2 months ago." "Oh, really?" Lucifer said victoriously. "A red-haired, pale-faced girl who only shows up at night, and no one knows where she lives." Mary was stunned. "You mean she's a vampire?" "I mean she is a witch. There was a book published in 1487 in the era of Pope Innocent VIII. It's called The Hammer of Witches. Have any of you read it?" Lucifer asked. Colby and Clarton both mumbled, "Yes." The book was known to them as they were specialists in the field. And then Clarton asked the girl gently, "This Harriet, did she have any identifying marks, like a tattoo or a unique birthmark?" The girl stared at the table for some time, then mumbled, "Maybe on her left shoulder." Victoriously, Dr. Lucifer exclaimed, "This is the decisive word. They say that witches are in a relationship with Satan, and this relationship leaves a special mark on their bodies. I think this Harriet is an evil witch who is toying with you, once with the spirit of Jack the Ripper, and another time with the vampire's curse." Folding my legs under me, I lit a rolled cigarette and asked, "And what do you suggest, Doctor?" "Burn the witch, and the stake for the vampire." I exchanged a confused look with Harry, and then I asked the man, "But I thought you were a practitioner of witchcraft. I didn't expect you to have these firm opinions about witches. Rather, I expected you to be more objectively open towards your female colleagues." "There are witches, and then there are witches. This Harriet practices black witchcraft, and I think she is like a snake. Her purpose is hardly worth mentioning, while her harmfulness is beyond description, and getting rid of her is the only way." And Lucifer aimed at Mary and said, "Let me tell you what will happen. For he's the jolly good fellow, which nobody can deny." Filled with confusion and questions, you go back to your normal life, Mary. Now you have become scared of everything, shaken from every shadow, and horror is no longer amusing to you. What you had heard about Louise and the image of Helen's murder does not leave your imagination, such that you are now even afraid to stay home alone in your room. You even find solace and companionship in the company of a little kid like your brother, or an old woman like your mother. But the signs keep coming. Why do you find every discarded cup upside down? And what's the secret of the blood on your towel you leave in the bathroom? And what's the secret of the number 3 written on the steamy bathroom mirror? What is the secret of this same number you find written in the dust on the table? You will ask everyone in your house, "Why did you write this on the mirror?" And they will answer by shrugging their shoulders and saying, "I didn't write anything. Why are you asking?" Why are the prank phone calls so repetitive these days? Every time the phone rings and you pick up, you hear nothing on the other end. Hello? Hello? Nothing. Nothing but slow, heavy breathing and waiting. Why exactly? Hello? "Answer, you jerk!" And you hang up nervously. Then you pick up again, hoping to hear who is speaking. But no use. Always the slow breathing and total silence. And when you leave your home at night, you are certain this is going to be your last trip. You don't want to, but your feet move as if they have a mind of their own. You slip unnoticed like a drop of dew out of your home. You have checked the locks, then put on your shoes, and go out to the dark streets. And you walk. The sound of dogs barking in the distance, and the cold. Your coat pulled over your shaky body, and you keep walking. To where? You don't know. But your feet know the way, and you enter this dark, empty alley and stand for a bit, waiting, and then you hear a voice calling you, "Mary," a whispery, gentle voice. So you look behind you. Blocking off the end of the alley, you find the shadow of that man standing opposite the light, so you can't see his features. And in his mouth is a lit cigarette looking like a burning hellstone. I have waited a century for this moment. He reaches into his pocket, pulling something out, something that looks like a coiled rope. And then you realize the truth about the number 3. You are the third in this vengeful circle, the circle of Harriet's games. It's your turn, my little one, with Jack the Ripper. But I promise you, it won't take long. Lucifer finished the tale. He gathered the tarot cards and started reshuffling them while the girl gasped in horror, and touched her neck as if she felt Jack the Ripper's rope around it, then asked, "Is that everything?" "Indeed." "And how do I stop it?" "The answer lies with Harriet." The girl looked at the mother, and then they announced their wish to leave, for the hour had gotten late. So Lucifer gestured broadly that they could leave. "Thank you, Dr. Lucifer," said Mrs. Mazursky, "for everything you showed us. You lit for us the dark tomorrow, and we trusted your knowledge, so we deserve to know." The jerk shook his head humbly. Never in my life had I seen humility closer to vanity as I had now. He waited until the women had stood and adjusted their coats and left the den. He then looked at us and asked, "Who is left? You, Colby, and Dr. Refaat. Who shall I start with?" I protested. "You forgot Mr. Clarton." "He has done the tarot experiment already, and that was 2 weeks ago." "Okay, then start with Colby." Lucifer replied, "Fine," then handed Colby the cards and smiled, a smile with 1,000 meanings. End of part 5. To be continued. I hope you guys enjoyed the story. To find out what happened to Colby, should I tell you? Let's leave it for next time. But please don't forget to hit subscribe.